With regards to so-called the wedding singer from many years ago now, 22, 22 years ago, it's quite a lot. Wow. Um, so with regards to that which even despite being made 22 years ago, was supposed to be set in 85. So yeah, with regards to that, um, well, yeah, I mildly liked it, but not too much either. And in terms of where I seem to stand in comparison to the average perception of it, it's very strange. Sandler really goes all the way with, some people really hate his, uh, some of his movies, some at least, others they like. I think the first one is really thought of badly. Hmm. And what I watched last time, Little Nicky is also seemingly thought of badly. In fact, there was someone who mentioned Wedding Singer in a review of Little Nicky, and at that point I hadn't seen it, but not entirely sure why they mentioned it because it's a completely different genre essentially. I mean, sure, he also manages to get in some romantic thing in Little Nicky, so it had something, but which the Wedding Singer had much more of this essentially. Um, but this is the problem of it, I think, in my opinion. I mean, it has comedy and his usual type of comedy. It seems like this was only his fourth movie at that point, but yeah, I think he established, I suppose, then this sort of comedy early on because it just sort of remains, so yeah. Eh, this is the problem. So it was comedic. I mean, I like that, but as usual, uh, when you combine genres, I guess you might either fail or succeed. I mean, in my opinion, most rom-coms fail, really. Many at least. Not, I don't know about most, but most are mediocre, maybe. Maybe only some really fail. No, this didn't really fail, but didn't succeed, in my opinion. It was one of those. I mean, it seemed a bit forced, like her supposed one to marry, was depicted, so-called, the character Glenn was depicted so stereotypically uh, one-sided, just wholly awful. It's a bit one-dimensional, you know, and obviously Sandler's character that he plays himself is sort of the opposite. Uh, maybe not quite totally the opposite. I mean, he's seen being weak and such, but otherwise, um, uh, it's sort of a problem. So I mean, I don't know if he just if it was just a movie about just confined to singing at weddings and somehow like when he started to sing about how life sucks and such. That was kind of funny. If only he did a bit more of this, but somehow most of the movie, I think about two-thirds, was taken up with this, hypothetical relationship they were going to have, and the ending is so, just what, I mean, this is supposed to be a comedy movie, not. I mean, I don't know. It sounds a little bizarre because I mean there was still a bit of comedy, like when somehow they managed to. I mean, this is the problem as well when these movies, a lot of movies do this actually. They try to, they seem to think, let's go with the attraction of stars, right? Somehow they plucked out Billy Idol out of nowhere, and there we go. I mean, I don't get it. It was still a funny scene, I admit. Though it's just him, being so uh, focused on what the relationship that guy was describing is like, and how no, the relationship is going wrong and such. It's still an obvious though play on the attraction of celebrities. It's not very. Many other movies do it. Many. Um, and the ending, to the very ending, is just too, most of the movie wasn't even, properly romantic or anything, and yet they really try to go for the proper romantic at the end, and it just doesn't work. I mean, there were so many random jokes. It doesn't work when you suddenly just switch off into full-blown romance with some apparently really written by Sandler song. I mean, why would he write a song himself? Did he really like it? I don't get it. I mean, and yeah, that bit wasn't really funny, really. Unlike say the bit where he says the song is uneven and he starts by praising his former girlfriend, and then ending up wanting to die and such. Um, in terms of how it contrasts and such, it was funny. That's where the comedy came from. When you get just a purely romantic song, when most of the movie wasn't romantic, most of the movie was so not romantic. I mean, yeah, just and I mean it did still build up, yeah. So it didn't just pop out of nowhere, but um, it's still very yeah. I cannot believe there's a musical made out of this. By the way, sure enough, it was very musical, so I suppose it makes sense. But what is musical about it? I mean, it's not exactly the sound of music or something. Yeah, it was mediocre in my opinion, really. But people seemingly thought highly of it. I mean, it's close to 7 as an average rating, which is quite high typically. So yeah, people like whatever they like, I guess. I have seen though, but in terms of comedy, this is a problem with some movies. So, multiple genres does work sometimes. Like as I was saying, as I was mentioned, it did work in Spellbound, and that also included romance along with comedy and horror though. Um, and it did work. I'm not sure if it is because there was also another genre, but ultimately it's just how much of the mixture is around, and how much is used and such. And in this case, they really went overboard with the supposed romance. I mean, I could never believe this as a romantic movie. Whenever he tries, he fails usually. And I think this is more of a failure than a success, but otherwise, the comedy wasn't too bad, like when the drunk guy at the beginning, dropped the glass and everything, and he was a funny one. What's he called again? There's a couple of actors I confuse. Looks like Walken, I thought, but I forgot his other name. Pretty sure he's a different actor though. Yeah, he was funny, and when he was sitting in the garbage bin, that was funny as well, kind of, mediocre. But of course, then they need to pivot onto supposed romance. Always that. I don't get it. Why do they force these situations? Just go along with the comedy, When the child was dancing with her as well. I mean, I don't know if that was supposed to be comedic, but it wasn't incredibly comedic either. But whatever, really. So yeah, it had ups and downs, mostly downs. I thought, just it's one of those things. I've seen better of both romance and comedy. And yeah, um, So I prefer Little Nicky at the Invade. I don't know why people don't like it, but I prefer the fact that it was sort of fantasy and such. I prefer that.